A question that I get asked quite a bit is, Michelle, when someone wants me to notarize their signature on a handwritten document or a photograph, what do I do? In this video, I'll be answering that question for Alabama notaries. My name is Michelle, and I appreciate you tuning in again for one of my videos. I'm going to hop off screen because for this topic, I have some visuals that I'd like for you to see. For those of you who have been following my channel and subscribing to the channel, you know from time to time, I answer questions that come in from some of you. And again, in this video, I'm going to attempt to answer the question. If you have questions about being a notary, I want to encourage you to either send those to me by email, or you can very easily write it in the comment below. So again, the question, what do I do when someone wants me to notarize a form and there isn't a notary certificate on the form? What if I'm asked to notarize a photograph, a drawing, or an ID card? These are all very good questions. Thankfully, for me at least, I'm not presented with these questions or these requests very often. Most of the time, the documents that require a signature and notarization will have a notary block, also known as a notary certificate, pre-printed on the form. But there will be, on occasions, times when that is not the case. In order to answer these two questions, I'd like to consult the experts. But before I do that, I would like to give you a short, direct, clear answer. Grab something to write this down if you want. In Alabama, and in most states, but I'm speaking to Alabama notaries specifically right now, you should never use your embosser or your ink stamp with your notary seal on any document unless there is a notary block or notary certificate. Okay, I'm going to repeat it a different way. If you are handed a sheet of paper and the individual is asking you to please notarize their signature on that piece of paper, and when you look at it, you don't see the section on the form for you to fill out, sign, and seal. That's called the notary block. If that's missing, you cannot notarize the signature. Okay? Now, is there a workaround? Yes. And that's what the experts and yours truly are going to talk about next. Let's first look at Alabama's notary law. Keep in mind, it was revised or updated September 1, 2023. And yes, this came up, this topic. You'll find this information, section 362072, and it reads, the form and content of any notarial act on an instrument to be recorded in the public records, including court system, shall include an oath, acknowledgement, and signature of each party to the document, or his or her mark, and the signature of the notary public and their seal of office by either ink stamp or embossed impression. Now, I know there is quite a bit of legalese there in this, but what this is saying is it is imperative when we notaries use our official seal to notarize that the document, the form, needs to reflect not only the signature of the signers, but then it goes into describing the notary block or the notary certificate. That's meant by oath, acknowledgement, and a place for everyone to sign. Okay. On the Alabama Probate Judges Association's website, that is where we notaries now must go when we want to renew our commissions. And part of the notary public training includes samples of acknowledgements. And I spoke with the representative. Well, we didn't speak in person, I don't think. I believe it was by email. We exchanged emails on this topic. I first thought that the Probate Judges Association, by including these examples, were communicating to us notaries that we had to use those exact forms and nothing else. But I clarified with the individuals that no, they were simply showing us examples, a format, an ideal, the preferred, the model. And if we model our certificates after those, then we're in a good place. All right. Before I leave this slide, I want to go back to this section here. I think this is important because it is indicating that this requirement is really important for any documents that need to be recorded in public records and documents that are used in the court system. And there are certain professions in the community that fall into this category. And so for me, what I'm going to do is just make sure all of my notarizations have certificates that comply with this requirement, because I don't always know when a document needs to be recorded in public records or if a document is going to be used in the court system. Remember, now we're referring to or checking out what the experts, notary experts, have to say about notarizing documents that lack a notary block or notary section. The NNA, National Notary Association, encourages us all to follow our state notary laws, but I really like that second bullet. Since you may not place your official seal on a document if notarial wording is missing, attach a separate, also known as loose, notarial certificate. And then always have the signer determine the type of notarization. So again, I love it. That second bullet, the NNA is agreeing with my earlier statement. There has to be a notary block or certificate for you to use your seal. Now, there are different types of notarizations we perform. And there are certificates, some of them require us to place a signer under oath, some don't. And this third bullet, the NNA is saying, if the notary block is missing, let the signer tell you, notary, whether they want to be placed under oath or not. I'll talk more about that later. Let's consult a couple more experts. On this slide, you see Michael Clausen and Peter Van Alstyne. They are both notary experts. They are well known, well established, published, trained in law. They have their Juris Doctorate degree, and I respect their opinions. So Michael Clausen, I've talked about him in other videos. Writes, the notary should, when possible, have the document signer's signature appear on the same page with the notary certificate. I agree, that's the goal. The goal is right underneath the signer's signature. That is where the notary block should be, if at all possible. It won't always be possible, but that should be the goal. The notary should securely affix the notary's notarial certificate to the notarized instrument to prevent or reveal its removal or the substitution of an unauthorized certificate. Mr. Clausen is saying just be very careful about how you, the notary, adds a notary certificate to a form. You want to do it in a way that the signer won't be tempted to use it for future forms down the road. Meaning, if you attach it or add it in a way that it can be removed, shared with others, that's an issue. And you should take great pains to make sure, however you choose to add this section to the form, it pertains to today's notarization, this specific situation, and it cannot be used by anyone else or for any other form. Peter Van Alstyne does not say anything too differently here, or may be included in a blank space within the document. Yeah, he's not saying anything different from what we've already covered on this slide. But there is some difference here for sure. First, let's go back to Michael Clausen. Notaries should not be tempted to simply sign, date, and seal the documents without notarial certificate language. We've already talked about that. Document signers should provide or select the form of certificate to be attached. So Michael Clausen is stating here, let the signer weigh in on the preferred method to add the notary certificate. And what you're going to see shortly will be 1, 2, maybe 3 ways to accomplish this. And Michael Closen, I believe, is saying, let the present the options to the signer and let the signer choose. I think he is also referring to whether or not an oath or an acknowledgement language needs to be used as well. Now, Peter Van Alstyne is taking a different approach. He writes, the informed notary understands when faced with a document not bearing a pre-printed or pre-selected notarial certificate, the jurat notarization is always the appropriate choice. The jurat notarization is superior because every legal element of law embodied within an acknowledgement is contained within the jurat with its additional steps, which is signature under oath and in the presence of the notary. Yeah, I'm a little speechless on this one. It's been a while since I've read this. Um, for this to make sense to you, the notary, you need to be very aware, very knowledgeable of what a jurat notarization is and how it differs from an acknowledgement notarization. Okay. I'm not able to get into those details right now, but what Peter is saying, if you're handed a letter, let's say a handwritten letter, and there is no notary block or certificate section, that you should recommend that the jurat wording be used. And I understand why he's saying that. I really do. But I'm not in agreement with this particular expert. I'm leaning more towards Michael Closen. That does not mean Peter Van Alstyne is wrong. This is going to be a personal preference. And if you like his suggestion, then I don't think it is a huge deal if you choose to handle it in the manner he describes. The last expert, I think it's the last one I want us to consider, the Model Notary Act. The Model Notary Act is federal, meaning it's a book of recommendations for states to adopt or adapt and incorporate into their notary laws. Alabama doesn't at this point in time. It may in the future. So we are not bound by this information, okay? In fact, we're not bound by anything other than what the state of Alabama requires, but some of this is good to know and good notary best practice. All right, we've already took care of that first bullet, but notaries should not execute a certificate that is incomplete or contains false information. We should never send a notary certificate containing our signature or seal to another individual for completion outside of our presence. This is something that notary signing agents sometimes are asked to do when they mail back a loan package and the hiring party says, oh, you forgot something or you misspelled the name. Just fill out a corrected blank certificate, sign it, stamp it, mail it to us, and we'll add it, replace the incorrect one. No, only you can do that. Only you can fill it out, sign it. You never send a template or a signed certificate for someone else to fill in the blanks. And then the Model Notary Act says notaries are not prohibited from describing the requirements of a notarial act or providing samples of certificates of notarial acts to assist that individual to determine the type of notarial act or certificate to be used. That is the approach that I adopt. So in these situations, I will say to the signer, would you like for me to use add an acknowledgement certificate or a jurat certificate? And for most signers, they'll ask, well, Michelle, what's the difference? I explain the difference, show them the difference, and then allow them to choose. I really like that as an option. What more can I add on this? First bullet we've already talked about. I do want you to take a look at that second bullet that reads, some state and federal government forms discourage the use of a separate or loose notarial certificate. The one form that comes to my mind immediately is the Alabama marriage certificate. That form has its own unique notary certificate. It looks totally different from anything you've seen before, and it has its own wording. And so under no circumstance would the state of Alabama allow a notary to attach a loose certificate to that and process it. It's just not going to happen. I'm willing to put money on it. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm willing to bet 50 bucks on that. They will reject it and just tell you to do it all over again. And there are other documents like this. And so this is another reason why I feel that there needs to be a discussion between the notary and the signer to fix the missing certificate problem. There have been some instances where I've directed the signer to pick up the phone and either call their lawyer or call whomever asked them to get their signature notarized and let that party, whether it's a bank, whether it's a school or business, and find out what they want so that all parties are in agreement and it gets done correctly the first time. Yes, the notary certificate can be handwritten if necessary. And that last bullet, I'm going to read it, but I'm going to go into details more. I'm going to let you read it now on the screen. Pause the screen if you need the video, if you need to. I'm going to go into more detail about that at the end. All right, let's quickly look at some sample documents. I hope you all can see this. This is example number 1. I am simply demonstrating what a handwritten letter might look like that a signer will bring to you. Don't get too hung up on it being signed already. That does happen on occasion, but Focus on this. There is no notary certificate or notary block. And as we've covered, since it's missing, I can't notarize it. You can't notarize it. It needs to be added. One method to add the notary certificate block is to add it by way of an ink stamp. The same company that produces or sells you your notary embosser and notary seal can also print up or manufacture a stamp with the notary certificate wording. Now, the font on this sample is small. Up top is the venue, state of Alabama, county of, this says Sawyer. This is just an example. Every notary certificate needs a venue. The middle section reads, sworn to or affirmed and subscribed before me this 30th day of April, 2023 by Annie Benson. And then there is the notary's signature, the notary's name, and the notary's commission expiration date. So this is simply an example of where Michael Manson, the notary, reached in his notary bag, brought out the stamp, stamped the bottom of Annie's letter with the notary certificate wording, filled in the blanks, venue, date, signer's printed name, and then the notary's signature, the notary's printed name. Wow. Yep. And commission expiration date. And then over here is the notary's official seal. That is example number 1 of how to fix a problem. Example number 2 is a sample of a typed letter from Aunt Willamay. Aunt Willamay calls Judith Lewis, the notary, and says, come notarize my form. Judith gets there and notices there is no certificate. I'm going to back it up. Aunt Willamay calls Judith, and Judith, being experienced while on the phone, asks Miss Willamay, I'll be happy to notarize your signature on your typed letter, but is there a section at the bottom for the notary? When Aunt Willamay looks at it, she's like, well, no, I typed it. I don't know what you're talking about. Judith may have given instructions to Aunt Willamay and had Aunt Willamay add this section, or Judith could have said, listen, what type of notarization do you want me to do? They talk through whether it's a jurat or an acknowledgement, settled on an acknowledgement, and Judith may have said, why don't you email me the form? I'll add the notary certificate section, print out the form, bring it with me, have you look it over, and then watch you sign it. And here is the end result. Here is the venue. Here is the middle section that spells out the date, the type of notarization, and Miss Willamay's name. And then below that, we have a signature from Judith Lewis, her name, her title, commission expiration date, and her seal. The third example is Judith. Is this Judith? I think so. Her printed name is not there, but we're going to assume so. In this case, instead of adding the notary certificate, Miss Willamay and the notary decided that she would attach, that the notary would attach a loose, this is called a loose notary certificate. It's a sheet of paper. And it appears that Miss Judith purchased a supply of these from the National Notary Association. She would have asked Miss Willamay, do you want me to do a jurat or an acknowledgement? And after Judith explained the difference, Miss Willamay chose the jurat. And on this form, Judith filled out everything. The only thing Miss Willamay would be required to do is sign her name here. But Judith filled out the venue, the date, the name of the signer, which is Willamay Smith, and then Judith signed her name as the notary, her commission information, and then going back to which one of the experts talked about, Judith went ahead and explained here the nature of the letter that accompanies the certificate. So she describes that the attached document, which is this here, is a typed letter about a personal loan. And the date of the letter is August 30, 2023. That should be here. And that there are there's one page. So again, the goal of this is to, again, make it difficult for Miss Willamay to try to reuse this form with a second, third, or fourth letter that she may end up typing. And here is the notary seal. It's funny, looking at this now, I see where I could have done better with this example, but hopefully that was enough to give you an idea. The last example, example number 4, this is an example of a surveyor's drawing or plans or plat. These can be small, these can be humongous. I've done a few of these and it can be very stressful. Don't be confused. This section here is not notary information. This is the actual engineer or surveyor's seal, statement, and signature. And once the surveyor is done, he needs to get with a notary and have the notary notarize his signature. How is that going to happen? When I've done it, I had to add the notary certificate wording somewhere where there is white space on this form, whether it's here. Now, ideally, it would be near this person's signature. So I'm thinking right here, where I'd have to add it with a stamp or my writing. Years ago, I purchased self-adhesive labels that had the notary certificate wording, and I just stuck it on here, filled in the venue, the surveyor's name, the date, a place for me to sign, and a place for me to apply my seal. Yes, it's possible that I could fill out a loose certificate, but I believe for this type of notarization, there's a good chance it would not be accepted. I do not have an example of notarizing a photograph, but I feel we've covered enough information for you to figure out how to do that. We've laid the groundwork. If it is a small photograph, there's no way for you to notarize that because you've got to add the notarial wording on the back of the photograph, which is very difficult to do given the size of the photograph, like a passport photo. And so your only alternative then would be to use a loose notarial certificate, one that has special wording, and one that includes a statement of the person um, in the photograph stating to whom it may concern or be advised that this is my true photograph, or this is a photograph of my parents. And they sign that statement and you notarize their signature. I hope that's helpful. That was a lot of information. I hope I didn't put you to sleep. Believe it or not, I removed about 8 slides from this presentation because it was just very, very long. What I want to leave you with are these points. Remember, if the document doesn't have a notary certificate or a notary block, you cannot perform the notarization. You're going to need to add it. Having the signer's signature and the notary block for you to fill out all on the same page, that should always be the goal. That is also better than having their signature on one page and then the notary block and your signature on an additional page. Sometimes it can't be avoided. Just keep in mind what the goal of the preferred method is. Let the signer decide whether you use an acknowledgement certificate or a jurat certificate. And then finally, when you're having to add the certificate, make sure that the language answers the following questions. Where? Where is the notarization taking place? That question gets answered in the venue. State of Alabama, county of Jefferson, Madison, Coffee, Bullock. You, the notary, are responsible for filling all of this out. When the notarization took place, that's going to be the date that you're performing the notarization. Who is the signer? Be really clear on and specific on with who you met with, whose signature you are notarizing. That's really important if a document has a place for 2 or 3 people to sign, but you're only meeting with and notarizing one person's signature. And then what type of notarization is being performed? An acknowledgement or a jurat? So where, when, who, and what are 4 questions that you, the notary, needs to make sure are answered in order for you to be confident that the notarial certificate is correct. I know I may not have answered all of your questions. I hope you found this to be more helpful than confusing. Be that as it may, if you still have questions, please type them in the comments below. Continue to come back, watch more videos so that you can hone your notary skills, get better, and become more confident whenever you are presented with documents that require signature notarization. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing you next time on the next video.